and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick, and today I have with me two experts on stormwater and ditches and drainage, and we're going to talk about those horrendous, unusual, giant storms that occurred back-to-back in August on a Saturday and a Tuesday. Welcome. We have Weston Young, welcome, and Quincy Daniel. And I'm going to let each of you talk about, first of all, just introduce yourselves and your specific responsibilities, because you work together, but you have some different expertise and roles. Weston?
Okay, yes, I am the city stormwater engineer, and as part of my job, I work closely with Quincy, but we try to not only alleviate issues we have now, but plan for the future. So we have several studies and projects underway that are constantly trying to improve both the quantity and quality of the stormwater that we have.
Okay. And Quincy, your specific role is?
Well, I'm the maintenance guy. I try to make sure everything stays clean and fresh, and so the water can flow out like it's designed to do in the ditches and pipes. And I work with Weston a lot because we are like a tag team when it comes to stormwater.
Right, because you have to maintain, and then you have to look at capacity or potential expansion or longer term solutions. All right, y'all are getting beaten up bad. The whole city's getting beaten up bad because we had just significant rain flooding. And people came to council recently. It's been on our Facebook page, and I believe y'all told me you've gotten one or two phone calls. Is that right, Quincy?
Yes, a lot of phone calls.
What is our stormwater system built for? What are we able to handle? Did things work the way they should?
Well, I'll handle that one. Our system is typically designed for a 10-year, probably average a 10-year storm frequency. So that's a storm that occurs once every 10 years. And when we had storms such as a few weekends ago that approached statistically 500-year, and in one location we recorded 11 inches over 3 hours, which is closer to statistically a storm that should happen every 1,000 years, the pipes get overwhelmed. So, you know, I guess with that, it's trying to keep, we try to put the biggest pipes in possible or keep the ditches as open as possible, but we always hit design constraints. Sometimes it's cost, sometimes it's groundwater. You know, we can put in a bigger pipe, but if we put it too low, we're going to have groundwater influence, or there's the tide.
So it won't work because it's partially full already. It can't carry more necessarily.
Exactly. And then there's the fact that we're a tidal community with high tides. That goes into those pipes. So usually a bigger pipe or digging a ditch deeper doesn't always help the solution. People would have standing water where they never had standing water before, or if it's in a pipe, it's out of sight, out of mind, but it still can't carry the amount of water we're trying to get through. You know, and then also there's, well, let's build things higher. Well, our infrastructure, so if we build all the roads.
So if we put a bigger pipe, it would push the height of the road up, and what would that do to when the water started to fall?
Yeah, and most of our houses drain to the roads, and if we build the roads up, that's no longer an option. So, and it's so cost prohibitive as well that
True.
It's like, we wouldn't be able to fund it without doing extreme measures in terms of you know, jacking up the stormwater fee to handle that, and then still the houses they become fish bowls basically. They have nowhere to go, and yeah, so it's a frustrating problem being in a coastal community such as Hampton.
What happens, you know, when you do those upgrades, and what is the goal of those?
Well, the goal of that upgrade was to make the ditch perform better than it was, remove all the sediment at the bottom of the ditch and make sure the outfalls were open. And we removed...
outfall, tell me, describe what that means.
Well, that's where all the water outlets to, into the bigger system before
so that's
it goes out
wherever you carry that water to.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and we try to make sure all that is working perfectly. And with doing the Farmington Canal, we removed all the wooded debris and regraded the bottom to make sure that the water flowed perfectly to the outfall.
So in that instance, you're getting it back to the capacity it was designed for, not necessarily increasing capacity,
right,
but at least getting back to what the original goals were.
Right.
And that costs a good bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was about $750,000. And there's a plan throughout the city to look at other ditches and do the same sort of thing. What is the one y'all are getting ready to start now?
The one that's currently under design, we're about 90% completed with the design, is the Penwood Canal drainage system. For the majority of it, Quincy's crews can easily maintain it. However, some of the, I guess, downstream sections still have trees growing in the center of them, and from a quality standpoint, we want to keep trees. Like, we don't want to remove them, but it makes it impossible for Quincy's crew to maintain that. And then with erosion, the larger storms, it can wash out the roots, and then we have a large tree blocking
you're in
the
real
canal,
trouble.
And possibly falling on private property as well. We want to avoid both of those scenarios. So the Penwood Canal is one that's, when it's done, it will improve capacity and remove the sediment that has accumulated there, and it makes it easier for Quincy's crews to go out there and keep it clean, keep the grass down, and so yeah, that is something. But one thing that citizens should be aware of is that these canals tend to drain, or ditches tend to drain to a water body, and if we have a high tide or a tide that's 3 feet higher than normal high tide, the water can't go anywhere. And we should mention that that's in the Mary Peak watershed. And what we are constantly doing as a form of planning, as I mentioned, for both quality and quantity, we're doing watershed studies every year. We recently did one that drains to the back river in like the Riverdale area. And we have 3 planned for this fiscal year, and we plan to do 3 a year, which will then tell us, hey, this is a location where you can put something that will help with flooding. Here's a location that will help clean the water a bit as well. So we will then look at that, and then we'll ideally tie it in with our master plan system, so that we're not conflicting with the ultimate design goals of certain areas of the city.
So what you're saying is, this is a long-term process. It's already been recognized, but you can't do everything all at once. And in fact, you need to figure out what can be done, where it can be done, and what's the most effective for the money also.
Exactly. And we also, we take the 311 tickets that we get, and the citizens...
Explain what that means. That means if I call 311 and say, my ditch is a mess, someone dumped trash in it, or there's a tree, or whatever else.
Yes.
Then what happens?
That goes to Quincy and I.
So Quincy gets a little alert.
Yes,
Right.
several others. And I'll let Quincy handle, once he...
Well, when the 311 ticket comes in, we read it, we touch bases with the homeowner, the resident, whoever, even if it's a business, we try to investigate to see exactly what they're talking about, because you can go out there, you might be thinking one thing and something different. And as we make our determination, if it's something I need to get with Weston on to get accomplished, then I'll say, hey, West, we got a scenario over here. What's the best way that we can get this solved?
Now, if you want people to call 311, not necessarily once the water's backed up to their yard. I'm sure y'all got a million calls when that flooding was happening, and you really can't look in that situation and figure out what the problem is, I guess, if it's, underwater.
It depends. With the extreme rainfalls we had a few weeks ago, there's nothing we can do there. There is localized flooding. Sometimes a ditch, they're maintained on a schedule, and they can fill up, or something can block it. Mm-hmm. And it's helpful when the citizens are our eyes, and they can say, you have a blockage here, please remove it. If it's a public ditch, that's something we should also clarify. If it takes public street water, it's a public ditch, so those are the ones we maintain. There are private ditches in Hampton that don't take public water, so we don't maintain those, and those are up for the citizens to maintain.
And those would be in neighborhoods?
Sometimes old neighborhoods,
right.
And the like, but it takes, say, backyard drainage, and that's up for the citizens to maintain.
Okay,
Yeah.
Got ya. People probably don't really realize that, do they? They think, anytime there's flooding, I'm going to call the city.
Yeah, and we can help point that out. We're looking at adding to our GIS a layer that shows, all right, this is a publicly maintained ditch, this is a private ditch, so that citizens, and we don't mind handling the call ourselves, or you can call 311 and we'll get back to you. But just say, I want to know if this ditch is public or private, and who's supposed to maintain it, and we will gladly answer that.
Okay. What else is the city doing? We recognize that it's a real problem for people. There are folks who get evacuated all the time. There are folks who were hit by flooding this time that just aren't normally affected in that way.
On the maintenance side, we at least once a year, we actively clean out every drain, every ditch throughout the whole city that we maintain. Now, things do get put in places where we don't know about. You know, we go to a new area and we don't know that something's there. It helps when the resident calls us and lets us know that, hey, we have a problem over there. Then we go over there and we look at it and we add it to our schedule, because it's always new neighborhoods being developed and it's new stuff that gets put out there, and we add it to our schedule and we maintain it as everything else we do throughout the city.
In other cases, we have projects we want to implement, and it's not necessarily funding that delays it, it's permitting. The fact that we're tidally influenced, we have to get permits through various agencies, sometimes involve the Army Corps and the like. We have some segments of road that drain through U.S. government property, and then we have to coordinate through them, and it's not, it's something that we'd love to have Quincy's guys go out there, today and make the change or make the improvement, but sometimes we have to negotiate with an outside agency before we can make those changes.
Explain to me, the federal or the Category 1 flood zone, that is not really rainfall flooding necessarily. That's generally driven by tidal flooding or storm surge, right?
That is correct. That deals with tidal flooding, which
there was some of.
Yes.
But it wasn't the primary cause of flooding. And so I know somebody I work with lives in Fox Hill, and that's a place that if there's tidal flooding, Fox Hill's underwater. And she didn't have a problem. She didn't have the volume of rainfall that they saw in Farmington or along that Newmarket area. And so this was really a different episode for people.
Mm-hmm. The storm that we had hammered the western part of the city and Newport News equally so. And it's, some areas didn't experience the amount of rain. And when we have high tides and the water can't escape, it's just, there's really nothing we can do for that. And it's frustrating going and seeing people who say, I put my HVAC unit in per code, why did I have to replace it? Or why is my car totaled? And it's something that, this rain event isn't something that, or the two back-to-back we had, is not normal.
Well, and there really wasn't warning. I think that's one of the things that affected people too, is when you have a hurricane coming, and if you live in that low-lying area, to go park your car somewhere else. To evacuate if you're regularly flooded, or you've already raised your AC unit because you've had this problem before. But when you have a volume of rainfall flooding, they don't know exactly where that storm's going to go. They don't know the intensity. You just don't get the preparation that you do in the major hurricane-style events.
Exactly. You said that very well. It's just we couldn't predict it. I want to say the weather told us a few inches of rain.
And you look outside the radius. Norfolk got 2 inches of rain. We got, 11 inches in some place. Yeah. And it was just that very localized intensity that made these storms so different.
Yeah, and the fact that it just sat on top of us. That was the thing. It's like you could just look up at the clouds and you're like, hey, it's moving that way. No, it's moving that way.
Right. If you get 4 hours in an hour and then it moves, that's not nearly as bad as 4 inches in an hour. If you get 4 inches in 1 hour and 3 inches in an hour and 2 inches in an hour, it's that volume.
Yeah. One to kind of go back to when we talk about our system's designed for a 10-year.
Right.
That's typically the 10-year storm for Hampton, if I remember correctly, is 5.5 inches over 24 hours.
Oh, we way exceeded that, didn't we?
We had areas that had 6 inches over 2 hours. We had one pump station that had a rain gauge that told us that we had 11 inches over 3 hours.
I know, I looked at those numbers, that's crazy.
Yeah,
so what you want to compare that to is what you were telling me a little bit earlier, is that's the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel.
Exactly.
And it was designed for X numbers of vehicles in an hour, however 20, 30 years ago.
Traffic is a perfect analogy where the tunnel can only handle so many cars. if you have an accident or say a blockage that impacts traffic, if you try to fit too many cars, so say beach traffic's trying to come through, you're going to have a backup. And then it's like, well, let's add another lane. Well, that costs a lot, or let's try to improve capacity. And what we do our best to explain to citizens is that the bigger pipe doesn't always work. And we run out of options. Sometimes we don't have much to offer other than, when the watershed study comes through, we'll see what professional consultants say. But there's a lot of positive aspects to living in a tidal, on the water or near the water, but there's also some cons, and there's issues with having high groundwater, and then like when we had the Saturday rain, and you had mentioned this earlier, the ground fills up, it saturates. And when you have another big rainfall right after it, you don't have any of that water absorbing into the ground. It's completely running off. And so the Tuesday rainfall we had seemed in some cases worse than the Saturday rainfall. And it came down to the saturation of the ground and how the system was already, did not have time to dry out.
You're saying that $19 million is sort of earmarked over the next 5 years, but you're also looking at individual studies of specific areas that are already known to be problems.
Oh, definitely. And we've recently, as part of the Waterways suggestions, we have a grant writer on staff that's helping us go after as many grants as possible.
Sabrina,
Yes, and she's been excellent. And we're looking at living shorelines and basically anything to improve our stormwater program such that we have less complaints.
Well, I appreciate all that you do, and we're going to keep having you back because I anticipate that flooding and really all of the waterways issues are huge concerns for Hampton residents, and there's not a quick fix, and we need to let people know what we're doing, and we need the chance to hear their concerns about what we need to be doing and keep that conversation going. So I appreciate it, Quincy and Weston, you guys coming by again and talking to folks about these issues.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for watching Round Robin. And don't forget, if you have an issue with a ditch or with flooding, call 311. We will come out and take a look at it. And we need those extra ears and eyes to help close the loop. Because a lot of those ditches are in places I can't drive by. They're going through people's backyards. So we count on your help on this issue. Thank you.